The piercing scream that erupted from the kitchen of Plot 23, Rumokoro Street, would haunt the neighbors for months to come. But Chioma didn't hear it at first. Her ears were filled with the latest Afrobeat song as she danced and swayed for her growing TikTok audience, her phone propped carefully against a vase in the living room. It had started as a normal Wednesday afternoon in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. The humid air clung heavily to everything it touched, and the sound of generators hummed in the background, a typical symphony of the city. Chioma's 18-month-old son, Obinna, had been fussy all morning, but she had bigger concerns. Her last TikTok video had gotten 50,000 views, and she was determined to capitalize on her growing fame. "Please watch my baby for a minute," she had told her younger sister Adana earlier that day. But Adana had her university exams to study for and had left 2 hours ago. Chioma hadn't even noticed, too absorbed in reading comments and planning her next viral dance routine. The kitchen had been Obinna's favorite place to play. The bottom cabinets made excellent hiding spots, and Chioma usually kept a few plastic containers there for him to bang together. That day, she placed a pot of water on the stove to boil for instant noodles, her quick solution for hunger between TikTok sessions. As Chioma performed her 5th take of the trending dance challenge, she was finally interrupted by the smell of something burning. The water had boiled over, and steam filled the kitchen. But it wasn't the steam that made her heart stop, it was the sight of Obinna's small body on the floor, the overturned pot beside him. The following hours were a blur of screaming, rushing to the hospital, and trying to explain to the doctors, and later to her husband Michael, how their son had managed to pull down a pot of boiling water while she danced in the next room. The burns covered 30% of Obinna's small body, predominantly his chest and left arm. In the sterile hospital waiting room, Chioma's phone kept buzzing with TikTok notifications. Her live session had continued running, capturing her scream when she discovered Obinna. The video was already going viral, but not in the way she had hoped. Comments flooded in, condemning her negligence, calling her the dancing mother of Port Harcourt, a title that would stick to her like a curse. Michael didn't say much when he arrived at the hospital. His silence was worse than any anger could have been. He simply looked at his wife, at her fashionable clothes chosen carefully for the TikTok video, and then at their son through the ICU window, bandaged and small against the white hospital sheets. The doctors said Obinna would recover, but the scars would remain, both the physical ones on his skin and the invisible ones on their family. Chioma deleted her TikTok account that night, sitting alone in the hospital corridor. Her phone screen, now cracked from when she dropped it rushing to Obinna, showed her last video, 100,000 views, but at what cost? In the weeks that followed, neighbors who had once admired Chioma's trendy dances now whispered behind her back. Her mother-in-law moved in temporarily to help care for Obinna during his recovery, her disapproving glances speaking volumes. The once lively house grew quiet, filled only with the sound of medical instructions and the gentle whimper of a healing child. Chioma spent her days applying burn cream and changing bandages, each moment a reminder of how a few minutes of social media fame had almost cost her everything. The trending dances and viral challenges that had once seemed so important now felt hollow and meaningless. One evening, as she sat beside Obina's bed watching him sleep, she found his old plastic containers from the kitchen, still strewn where they'd fallen that day. She gathered them up, and for the first time since the incident, she sat on the floor and played a simple game of drum beating with her son. No phone in sight, no audience needed, just a mother and her child, finding their way back to what truly mattered. 6 months after the incident, Chioma sat in front of her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. A message had just arrived from a prominent Nigerian news station. They wanted to interview her about the dangers of social media addiction among young parents. Her first instinct was to decline, to hide away as she had been doing, but something made her pause. Obina, now 2 years old, played with his toys nearby, his burn scars visible beneath his short-sleeved shirt. The marks had faded from angry red to pale brown, but they remained a permanent reminder. He had grown more withdrawn since the accident, crying whenever strangers tried to touch him or when he heard the sound of boiling water. Michael had moved out 3 months ago, claiming he needed space to think. Their marriage counselor suggested it was temporary, but the divorce papers sitting unsigned on Chioma's bedside table told a different story. The dancing mother of Port Harcourt had become the cautionary tale of the neighborhood. But life had a way of offering second chances in unexpected packages. During one of Obina's therapy sessions, Chioma met Janet, another mother whose child had been injured while she was busy on Instagram Live. The two women formed an instant connection, sharing their guilt, their pain, and eventually, their hope for redemption. Together with 3 other mothers who had similar experiences, they started a support group called Present Parents. What began as small meetings in Chioma's living room soon grew into a movement. They shared their stories on radio shows, visited schools, and spoke at community centers. Their message was simple but powerful. The real likes and follows that mattered were the milestones in their children's lives. The headline that had once read "TikTok mother's negligence leads to tragedy" was slowly being replaced by "Former social media addict leads movement for conscious parenting." Chioma learned to use her voice for something bigger than dance trends. One evening, as she prepared for their largest speaking engagement yet at a parenting conference in Lagos, Chioma received an unexpected visitor. Michael stood at her doorstep, holding a newspaper featuring an article about present parents. "I saw what you've been doing," he said quietly. "Obina needs both his parents to be present." That night, as Chioma helped Obina get ready for bed, he didn't flinch when she poured his bath water. Instead, he splashed playfully, his scars now telling a story not just of pain, but of healing and transformation. Her phone lay forgotten in another room, its notifications silenced. The only viral thing in her life now was the spreading message of mindful parenting, and the only followers that mattered were the small footsteps of her son, trailing behind her as they walked together toward a more conscious future. The story of the dancing mother of Port Harcourt didn't end with a tragedy. Instead, it became a beginning, a wake-up call for a generation of parents lost in the shimmer of social media fame. Chioma's greatest performance turned out to be not a dance routine, but the graceful transformation from a distracted mother to a leader of change, proving that sometimes our deepest wounds can become our most powerful purpose. 3 years had passed since the incident, and Rumokoro Street had changed. The old house at Plot 23 was now adorned with a signboard reading, "Present Parents Foundation, Every Moment Matters." What had started as a small support group in Chioma's living room had blossomed into a full-fledged NGO, with branches spreading across West Africa. Obina, now 5 and preparing for primary school, had become the unofficial mascot of the foundation. His scars had faded further, and though they were still visible, he wore them with a surprising confidence for a child his age. "My marks remind people to love their children more," he would say, repeating the words he'd heard his mother use in her speeches. Michael had not only moved back home but had become an integral part of the foundation's work. His experience in corporate banking proved invaluable as they expanded their reach. The couple that had nearly been torn apart by social media addiction was now featured in national newspapers as an example of family rehabilitation and purposeful parenting. But success brought its own challenges. One morning, as Chioma prepared for a meeting with government officials about implementing phone-free zones in schools, she received a troubling message. A popular social media influencer had posted a video mocking her past, calling her transformation fake, and suggesting it was all a scheme for attention. The old Chioma would have crumbled under such accusations, but time had strengthened her. Instead of responding online, she invited the influencer to spend a day at the foundation's newly opened crisis center, where they dealt with cases of children injured due to parental negligence. The invitation went viral, not because of any dance moves, but because it offered a chance for genuine dialogue about social media's impact on parenting. The foundation's work took an unexpected turn when they began receiving calls from across the continent. A mother in Kenya whose child had drowned while she filmed a YouTube video. A father in Ghana who lost his son in a park while trying to capture the perfect Instagram moment. Each story reinforced the importance of their mission. Adana, Chioma's sister, who had been studying during the incident, now ran the foundation's youth outreach program. She worked with teenagers, helping them understand that life's most precious moments couldn't be captured in likes and shares. The siblings had grown closer, their bond strengthened by their shared mission. One day, while sorting through old belongings, Chioma found her cracked phone from the day of the accident. The sight no longer filled her with shame. Instead, it had become a powerful teaching tool, displayed in a glass case at the foundation's headquarters, a reminder that every parent's choice could change a child's life forever. The foundation's biggest achievement came when they successfully lobbied for the Present Parenting Act, a law requiring childcare centers and schools to have strict policies about phone usage during child supervision. The signing ceremony was attended by families from across Nigeria, many of whom had their own stories of near misses and wake-up calls. As Chioma stood on stage at the ceremony, with Obinna holding her hand and Michael beaming proudly from the front row, she reflected on how far they'd come. The trending dances and viral challenges that had once consumed her life had been replaced by something far more meaningful, a movement that was saving lives and bringing families closer together. That evening, at their family dinner, now a sacred, phone-free time, Obinna asks, "Mama, are you happy you can't dance on TikTok anymore?" Chioma smiled, watching her son's face in the warm light of their dining room. "I dance more now than I ever did before," she replied, "but now I dance with you, and that makes all the difference in the world." 10 years had passed since the incident that changed everything. Present Parents Foundation had become an African success story, with headquarters in 15 countries. But for Chioma, the most significant transformation wasn't in the organization's growth, it was in the small moments that unfolded within her home. Obinna, now 12, stood before his class giving a presentation about overcoming challenges. His scars had become his strength, and he spoke with a wisdom beyond his years. "My mother always says that sometimes our biggest mistakes can lead us to our greatest purpose," he told his classmates, his voice steady and proud. The foundation faced its biggest test when social media companies began pushing back against their advocacy work. These corporations sent representatives to Nigeria, arguing that their platforms actually helped parents connect and share experiences. Instead of fighting them, Chioma invited them to collaborate. Together, they developed a groundbreaking new Parents Mode feature that would automatically limit screen time when children were detected nearby. Michael had retired from banking to work full-time at the foundation, and their marriage had grown stronger through their shared mission. They had welcomed another child, a daughter named Grace, who had never known her parents to be anything but fully present. The contrast between their past and present lives couldn't have been starker. One day, while cleaning out their old storage room, Obinna discovered his mother's viral video from that fateful day. Rather than hiding it, Chioma sat with him to watch it. "This was the moment that taught me what truly matters," she explained, holding him close. "Sometimes the worst day of your life can become the beginning of your best days." The foundation's work had expanded beyond social media addiction to address all forms of digital distraction in parenting. They opened technology-free family retreat centers across Africa, where parents and children could reconnect without screens. These centers became havens for families seeking to rebuild their bonds. As Chioma prepared to hand over the day-to-day operations of the foundation to a new generation of leaders, including some of the children who had been affected by similar incidents, she received news that would bring her journey full circle. The World Health Organization had adopted her foundation's guidelines for healthy digital parenting as a global standard. During the celebration of the foundation's 10th anniversary, Obinna surprised everyone by performing a dance, not for social media, but for his mother. As they swayed together on the dance floor, tears streaming down their faces, the gathered crowd witnessed the beautiful truth that real life, with all its imperfect moments, was far more precious than any viral fame. The story of the dancing mother of Port Harcourt had become legend, but not for the reason anyone could have predicted. It was a story of how one mother's worst mistake had sparked a revolution in conscious parenting across a continent. As Chioma often said in her speeches, sometimes the most important likes are in the eyes of your child, and the only followers that matter are the little feet walking beside you. That night, as the family gathered for their traditional dinner, Obinna asked to see his baby pictures, including those from the hospital. Looking at them, Grace asked, "Mama, do you ever wish you could go back and change that day?" Chioma looked around at her family, at Michael, who had found the strength to forgive, at Obinna, whose scars had given hope to others, at Grace, who had never known a distracted mother, and smiled. "No, my love," she replied. "That day taught me that every moment with your children is a dance. And now, I never miss a single step."